Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Sim Sundays podcast, sponsored by Aztec Sim Sports. So this week we have a very exciting guest, a very close friend of Gridfinder in the show, Sim Sundays, Carolina Mastretta, co-founder, along with her brothers, Carlos and Alberto, of Original Fire Games, who of course make Circuit Superstars. And bafflingly, in 4 weeks, made the newly announced Karting Superstars. So we go into how that came about, how on earth they built it in 4 weeks, and the thought process behind it. Like, what was the requirement to build it in 4 weeks? And it's absolutely fascinating. And as always, Kara gives a really great insight into the feel and the ethos of the studio, Original Fire Games. So this is a really great episode. I really enjoy speaking to Cara. I've been fortunate enough to meet her in person, and she is incredibly passionate about what she does. So thank you, Cara, for coming on the show. Really appreciate it, and really enjoyed our conversation. Okay, enjoy. Caro, welcome
Thank
to
you.
the show. Thank you so much for coming on to the Sim Sundays podcast for the second time. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm not surprised you're doing pretty good because you've just done something that I don't think I've seen, definitely not in sim racing for ever, I don't think, which is a surprise release. You've done a surprise release of a game. How do you pull off a surprise release of a game? And by that, I'm talking about the brand new Karting Superstars. How did you manage to keep it secret?
uh, oh my gosh, it was hard. We've wanted to. It's always been a difficult process internally to get to a point where we're like, we really want to share what we're building. But then as soon as you share what you're building, you have to start building. Like you have to show once you're
Mm,
ready to start building some momentum. And with Karting Superstars, it was a surprise to us, as it is a surprise for people, because we at the beginning of the year weren't planning on making this game. It's very much a strategy that we came up with at the studio when we sat down to, in a heart-to-heart mode, figure out how we could build something great, with everything that we've created so far, within a short time frame. Um,
that's awesome.
and
So the heart to heart.
yeah,
So you had Circuit Superstars came out and it was a huge hit, especially. I mean, Circuit Superstars is for gamers, right? It's anybody who likes any kind of game, right? Lots of gamers will like some
yeah,
kind of racing game, and it's kind of like a fun focused racing game.
hmm,
But it
yeah,
seems to have really kicked off in the sim racing community. Like everybody in the sim racing community knows what Circuit Superstars is, and when it came out, it was
oh,
like a huge, it was a huge hit. Loads of streamers played it, and it was just like instantly loved, right? And it's been
yeah,
growing, and you've got a really strong community behind it. So then you had this
yeah.
heart to heart. What was it that triggered? Okay, tell you what, let's do another game, and let's do it really fast, and let's make it about karting, and let's release it like next month.
Yeah. Yo, well, I think that the context is something that any like startup, like yourself, any startup founder, will relate to. um, when when it's difficult to fundraise, you have to figure out what to
Mm,
do with the resources and time and people, available to you, and the energy that you have. um, for us, Circuit Superstars 2 is the project that we wanted to make, because we love Circuit 1. We also love our community. We love all of the suggestions that they've brought up. And we saw the next right thing to do, like the next right step. We saw it as Circuit Superstars 2.
mm.
We want to take what we've built, evolve it, and bring in new exciting systems that people have wanted to see, in our previous game a lot, like weather, tire compounds, rain, etc. And so, this year has been about prototyping and pitching that project. And it just happened to coincide with a difficult year in the games
Mm.
industry. In Vancouver, specifically, I think that we've seen this worldwide. It's been a difficult year to fundraise, across tech in general. Um, In our case in particular, I think that at the time that we made the decision to commit to Karting Superstars was uh, during a week in which there were hundreds of layoffs in the
Yeah.
Vancouver,
Yeah.
like around us, and my like alma mater studio, half the studio laid off, and then other friends and other friends,
Mm.
and studio closures, and um, it is a so that's kind of like the emotional undertone that we were in, and it's not because we were about to close, but because we were just kind of seeing the industry struggling as a whole, and contextualizing the fact that it was taking us so long to sign circuit, and to like really ignite conversations about it. um, it's really hard in those processes to not turn that into like, oh, it's because the product doesn't have value, or
Mm.
we're just not that good of a team.
Yeah.
you know but rather the circumstance helped to see like it's a difficult time in the industry. What can we do to adapt? And so what we wanted to do is create a revenue stream into the studio, as soon as we could, um, in a way that engaged our tool set, in a way that allowed us to invest in things that we wanted to build for our tool set anyways, and see how it went. Like with Circuit Superstars, we started in 2019, so it really had been a while that we had been super focused on that game, and there was a lot of experimentation and development done on that game, but we really hadn't had time to innovate, to craft something new, to think differently. And the circumstance just presented us all with that opportunity. Does that all make
Yeah,
sense?
it makes a lot of sense. I guess it's
Yeah,
very kind of circumstantial, right? And the journey that you talk
very.
about for startup founders is definitely one that everyone has been feeling in the last couple of years. As well, maybe even less, maybe like the last 12 months, 18 months, fundraising has become
Hmm.
particularly difficult. And I guess as an indie studio in particular, you must feel
Yeah,
very kind of at risk. But I guess on the other hand, your co-founders are your brothers, right? So I
yeah,
imagine that gives you a lot of strength when you're kind of going through these tough times. You're with the absolute perfect people
yeah,
to be like, right, how do we pull ourselves
yeah,
together and how do we pull through?
yeah. Yeah, exactly. We're very lucky to have an excellent relationship, and that really throughout the process of owning and building the company, we've only gotten closer. And then John Werner, who's an engineer in our team, he's been working with us since we started, and him and I worked together making strategy games in the past. Um, we're a tight knit unit, so he's an essential part of the team. And then the fifth member, Andrew, he lives in Edmonton. He's the only one not in Vancouver. But yeah, when you work with that small of a
Mm,
group of people for long enough, it it's an
yeah.
intimacy of work, and you have to be very honest about circumstances, and be able to like sit down with truth and be like, what are we going to do about this?
So be
So
honest then,
yeah.
during those conversations, was the idea of
Mhm.
just not continuing, was that on the table or was that never even considered as an option?
No, not really. Because we're so passionate at
Mm,
what we're doing. I feel passionate not only about making racing games and like and servicing Jesus,
yeah.
making the people that play our games
Yeah.
happy. That is obviously a huge driver of our motivation. But also, um, I just want to succeed at
Mm,
this. I want to be able to continue to do what we do, to um, uh, be our own leaders, to be the people behind the
yeah.
creative force of what we do.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been we've definitely, I've had personally, not as a team, but I have had moments, especially this year, where I felt like I've needed to choose this work again.
Mm.
You
That's
know,
interesting.
to
That's interesting.
yeah,
Not because you're stopping and then starting again, but
hmm
you're just reminding yourself that doing what you're doing is a choice.
that it makes sense for my life and that it's what I want to do. You know, that like that I'm not trapped here.
Yeah.
I think that's a I don't know if you can relate or if that has happened to you in
No,
your startup endeavors.
totally. As soon as
But
I think it's as soon as you start taking on team members, and all of a sudden you have
yeah,
a responsibility for their career progression, their salary,
yeah,
the fact that they're paying bills, the fact that that their salary is going towards life ambitions for them and their families. All of a sudden, it
yeah,
feels very real, and it's not.
yeah,
A lot of these things start as a hobby project, right? And you're doing it out of joy,
yes,
and that's fine,
yeah,
and that should always be the core. But it would be
yeah.
unrealistic to disregard the fact that actually what you're now doing is supporting people's life.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. People, and you have to respond to people's
Mm,
trust in you as an employer, right?
yeah.
And I think my response has been sincerity, and but it doesn't like sincerity helps, but obviously you understand it's a very it feels big, the responsibility, right? So like what I mean by choosing the work again is just kind of like um having that internal conversation of why am I doing what I'm doing, and does it feel like it's coming from a sincere place, or am I resenting work,
Mm,
am I feeling trapped here? um, so it's been I think how I would summarize 2023 is it's the year where I personally went through the internal process of understanding that I'm not building a game, that I now need to build a company. We
mm,
kind of started original fire games to build a game, and we did circuit superstars, and then now we have to build a company, and think company wide, right? And think long-term purpose, think long-term strategy,
mm.
because definitely how we started was putting all of our vision in circuit will succeed in a way that it will make us financially independent and we will fund ourselves our next game.
Well,
And
this
so
is it, right? So out of the
yeah,
the ashes of this very kind of
yeah,
like stark reality of the struggle has come
yeah,
the what is it, the flame, the joy of karting circuit stars too, or as you call it, case up, which
yeah.
is a really cool little
Case
nickname,
up, yeah.
case up.
Yeah.
So let's talk
But I
let's talk about
yeah, every time
let's talk
I
about case up.
yes, let's do
So
it. I was just gonna say every time I say case up I think ketchup and it's so funny.
everyone loves ketchup. It's a
Yeah,
positive
exactly.
brand
Yeah.
affinity,
Who
I would
doesn't?
say.
I love it.
So, okay, so you got around the table and you
Hmm.
reviewed your situation. You decided, right, the way forward is to create another standalone game. And presumably,
Hmm.
you made the decision very quickly that you're going to do it very fast. Now, you're a very small team, as
Yeah.
you said, right? So there's you and your two brothers, and then you've got your two other engineers who have worked with you for a long time. So you're a very small team of five. How do you
Yeah.
possibly pull off developing and publishing a game within 4 weeks? Presumably, a lot of the architecture of Karting Superstars is taken directly from Circuit Superstars. So, I guess my real question is how do you bring out a game like Karting Superstars without it feeling like essentially like a DLC?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's something fair to ask, and that a lot of people might ask. So we're definitely so the everything we built with Circuit Superstars, the tech side of it, we call our racing game toolkit. And the vision, as we've built it, is to create a suite of features that allow us to craft any karting game, or really any
Hmm.
racing game, whatever it might be. And one of the changes that we built into the system earlier this year, with that vision of crafting any racing game, was basically separate the 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 racings from vehicles, like the physics from being vehicle only driven.
Hmm.
So because we were envisioning like, what if at one point it occurs to us that we want to make a hamster racing game, and they're racing in spheres and they're racing in a living room,
Yeah.
um, and we wanted to kind of uh, our vision always is to grow our versatility. And so our tools are built to be versatile, to be modular. Like if we need something from the tool set, we can bring time trials, we can bring replays, or we can leave them out. So that's kind of that kind of contextualizes how we see the our internal technology. And then for the rest of it is really, we looked at circuit one, and a lot of, a lot of people loved it. A lot of people had a really hard time with it because of the camera. It is an accessibility compromise that
Mm.
we made by making a top-down racing game. And I saw it firsthand every time that I tested the game with friends. You hand the controller to somebody playing Mario Kart, and they pretty quickly understand how to move forward,
Hmm.
right? And you don't have to fight your brain to understand how to turn right and left. Um, with Circuit, there's a bit of friction in that process. And that's fine. It's a top-down racing game. We love the genre. We're probably gonna make more games in that space in the future because we love top-down racing. Um, but with but we had that thought of what we had been experimenting with different cameras for Circuit Two, because a lot of people had asked us. What if we had the camera option? Like, can't we have the camera option to go behind the car? And a lot of people didn't that bought the game asked for that. A lot of people that didn't buy the game said I would get it if you had that
Mm.
option. So with Circuit 2, we started prototyping both with the top-down camera and behind. So and that felt really fun to us in the prototype of Circuit 2. And so when we started thinking about Case Up, we actually thought about it as a top-down title originally, because we thought about expanding. That's kind of when we started thinking about Circus Superstars as a franchise of racing superstars. Our vision, I'll walk you through a couple of different steps that we took towards the envisioning. The first was, as a business, we thought we need to create a revenue stream. What is the fastest game that we can make that provides a new experience, that we can ship quickly, that we feel proud of to put out there? Um, and there was that concept. As a result of thinking about that, like fast production of games, we thought, okay, um, we have a lot of IP created with Circuit Superstars. We have a world, we have an aesthetic, we have a charming world of
Mm.
motorsport. All of this art direction, that's IP. All of our tracks, that's IP, right? Like all of the tracks we've designed ourselves. Nothing is licensed, and so we see this like opportunity to grow a world of racing superstars. Um, and so the third thing we thought about was, okay, if we're if we can prove that we can build that game in a short cycle that provides a new racing experience, we could imagine that in the future we can do a rallycross title, or a motocross title, or a water bikes
Mm.
title. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the vision, is that growing a franchise of racing superstars around the IP that we were going to build with each game that we create.
So why
um,
karting then? So you said it, you gave a couple of different
yeah,
examples there, and Rally stood out to
yeah,
me because obviously you have Art of Rally,
yes,
which is
yeah,
a beautiful game. A different art style to
it
yours, but
is.
it's kind of it's got some similarities. What made you
Yeah.
choose karting?
So karting, we went to it because we absolutely love it. Because it's what we grew up doing. Like my brothers, I don't know if they talked a lot about their story with racing when they came on the podcast in the past, but um, we grew up watching our dad in RC car racing, and then Charlie started karting. Alberto started karting shortly after, and then, like, how I remember my childhood and teen years is in racetracks. Like every weekend, packing the van, packing the carts, everything on a little trailer, and driving with my family to go karting across all of Mexico, um, which was an interesting way to grow up.
It sounds like a lot of fun.
Very, it was a lot of fun. Yeah. And so karting has always been extremely dear to us, and we love the culture around it. We love watching the races. Like I myself and my brothers will occasionally just like throw up a race on YouTube. It's super fun to watch. And the tagline that I wrote for Karting Superstars is every racing legend had an origin.
I
And
love
for
that.
many it's karting, right? Because it's true, right? Like so many, Lewis Hamilton started in karting. Max Verstappen, you recently spoke to Super GT karting. It's a it's the purest form of motorsport, is how we see it. It's extremely challenging, extremely fun to watch. So that was kind of like the force behind it. And more importantly, we wanted to build a different kind of racing, because if we had done we could see ourselves doing something with rally, etc., or like with just ovals
Mm.
racing, for example. Um, but that felt very close to Circuit Superstars. So karting, we felt this is a new kind of racing that will feel quite different than anything we've done
And
before.
does it feel different?
It does, yeah. I it The most striking difference to me is the just how you experience the game from the different camera
Mm.
perspective, and the physics of it. I find it easier to get into, more challenging to win.
Interesting. So
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of like I think I've used this analogy on an episode before, but it's kind of like
Hmm.
skiing and snowboarding, whereas
Hmm.
skiing is easy to pick up, but hard to get really, really
Hmm.
good at, whereas snowboarding is really, really hard to pick up, but then you seem to accelerate quite quickly once you've kind of got the basics. This is like the
Yeah,
skiing model, right?
exactly. Yes, that's a fantastic analogy, actually. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
that's kind of exciting because then it makes it more accessible, and you can give people
Mm.
little hooks in that early stage when
Yeah.
they're kind of getting like half decent at it. Something that
Yeah.
I noticed about the game
Yeah.
was the racing itself. So that like the kind of
Hmm.
like the how close it can be, the style of braking and turning. It feels like it really lends
Hmm.
itself to some genuinely interesting, challenging racecraft.
Definitely, yeah. And it's not something that there are not many karting games out there that appeal to the
Mm.
competitive to the competitive community that Circuit Superstars attracted. There's tons of karting titles. Recently played the Smurfs karting game.
I have not played the Smurfs
Like,
racing game. Right, we need to get that up on Grid Finder now. I did not know that was a thing.
definitely. But yeah, like there's a lot of karting titles, and there's Kartcraft, of course, in the past, which was very
Hmm.
sim racing focused.
Yeah.
But what we do, our bread and butter is Simcade, right? It's building racing games that get close to the simulation of a racing experience, what makes racing thrilling, right? But arcade in the sense that you can have those experiences within a very short time frame, and with a low investment, right? You just need a gamepad to get some really exciting motorsport experiences. You don't need
Mm.
a rig. um, I've always loved what people in the same racing community say about Circuit Superstars, about how it's kind of like what they play to
Mm.
relax, or in between sessions. Um, I mean, if relaxing, it's like tightening your butt cheeks and feel and yeah, like getting tense from the excitement of racing. But that's kind of we definitely do. We wouldn't have done Karting Superstars if we didn't see a market opportunity that felt important to tap into.
Yeah. Interesting, because I was about to say that I guess there's a gap in the market for
Hmm.
go-karting, but actually when you think about it, Mario Kart is kind of karting, but obviously it has the battle element to it. But it's a
Exactly.
game that
Yeah.
kind of like feels nice, and you can race. I remember when I was as a kid playing on the it would have been the Game Boy. What was the one that flipped open? I can't remember the name of that. It wasn't. It was one up.
The DS.
No, well, was it yes, maybe it was the DS. It was the one
Yeah.
after the Game Boy Color, and I remember having
Yeah.
Mario Kart on that Game Boy, and I
Yeah.
remember I'd always play without the box, without the boxes and the power ups and stuff. I would play just for
Yeah.
the time trials and the racing because I loved how you could cut the
Yes.
corners
Yeah.
and you could find the lines, and so it's
Yeah.
kind of like if you don't want the craziness of Mario Kart, but you still want to experience that kind of joyful karting racecraft. Now
Exactly.
there is something out there for you in the form of Karting
That.
Superstars,
Yeah.
right?
That's exactly it. Yeah. It's like the most exciting aspects of karting without power ups.
So here's the thing then. So obviously you said that all
Yeah.
of your tracks are totally unlicensed. Have you ever considered trying to put, now that it's karting, maybe it's a bit easier, I
Hmm.
don't know. Have you ever considered trying to put some licensed tracks into the game?
Um.
In the
It's
4 weeks since you decided to
in
build
the
this game,
first.
right? Like, come on, what are we talking?
Yeah. Oh gosh. I mean, we're not for lunch for sure. But we would love to in the future to explore that because there's just some wonderful tracks that we would love to see and race in ourselves. Um, we're lucky that we do have a tool set that allows us to create tracks fairly quickly, where fairly quickly is not like pumping out one a week. We definitely um, wanted to bring for Karting Superstars some of the racetracks from circuit
Mm,
that we thought were good for Karting Superstars because some don't feel right, some are just too tight, too small, too quick.
mhm,
They don't fit. But a lot of people in our Discord community, the first track that we used is called Siena. It's a Circuit Superstars track, and a lot of people that did karting were like, "Ah, I've always thought of this track as a karting track." So we just kind of like looked through our repertoire, grabbed the things that we felt made sense for this game, and are starting to craft new ones that we're pretty excited to put out. Our goal, of course, is the game is selling and we're able to sustain ourselves and not have to pivot,
mhm,
and we'll add more tracks to the game as much as we can. We've always wanted to also run community contests to design tracks and kind of like build some participation avenues for that ahead of eventually, hopefully, being able to support modding. And so that's kind of the vision to grow that repertoire.
I mean, that even just in that 30 seconds, that's a huge amount of expansion for this game, right? So you've kind of built this
Yeah.
baseline in 4 weeks, but so now you have then, okay, so now you have two games. You have CS and you have
Hmm.
K-Sub, right, as we'll call it.
Yeah.
Um,
Catch up.
Now, my
Yeah.
last podcast I recorded
Hmm.
earlier today was with with Tom and John from Traction GG, and I mentioned to them that I
Yes.
was speaking to you, and John asked a question which actually leads straight into this. So I'm stealing John's.
John Munro.
Yes, John Monroe. Yes. So I'm
Okay.
stealing his question
Yes.
here, which is, what are
Okay.
your intentions for content support for Circuit Superstars? Now, he was specifically asking about Circuit Superstars now that Case Up is out. But I'm interested to know,
Hmm.
how do you now balance having two games and which ones do you
Yeah.
prioritize? And, can you make content that goes across both of them? Like, what's your strategy there with content?
Yeah. I mean, it always comes down to two things: funding. Like if a success of Karting Superstars allows us to continue to fund the studio, and that empowers us to focus our attention into supporting the title. Um, for Circuit Superstars, we unfortunately at this time can't update it because of reasons
Hmm.
out of our control. But we want to fix that. We're pushing hard to fix that. And once we're able to, our vision is to continue with that modularity of the toolset that I talked about. So, to give you an example, Spectator, huge feature that we've been lacking on Circuit Superstars, is something that we felt was like something that was missing for the game to ignite, right?
Mm,
Because it empowers
yeah.
broadcasters, it empowers content creators, it makes the game just a lot of fun to watch and to access for more
Hmm.
people. And so it's a feature that we've wanted to build. We didn't have the bandwidth to build it for Circuit. We want to have the bandwidth to build it for Case Up. but we would build it in a way that we can add it to both games as we're able to. Um, of course, as if Circuit Superstars becomes unblocked, we would add it. If not,
Mm,
it's built for with Circuit Superstars 2
right. And then
in its
and then
vision.
if Rally Superstar comes out, then you can just
Yeah.
pick it up and put it in there, right? That's the idea of this system.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and so that's kind of the answer to your question is the as we it all depends on how successful this game is and how much it empowers us. But we want to see case up grow in tracks, in features, in DLC of like different looks for your cart, different types of carts potentially. We we remodeled the drivers because we've loved in Circuit Superstars. People love the drivers. They use them a lot for their for their competitive leagues, profiles,
Hmm.
etc. They leverage the drivers as like an identity builder. Um, and because of that reason, for Karting Superstars, we completely rebuilt the drivers to be a lot more high res and a lot more detailed. And because we saw that as a marketing asset, like the the cooler people's identity in game can look, the more they'll want to share it.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
very cool. I mean, it's it's not news that gamers love to
yeah,
build their online personas and be able to customize them so that when people are racing against them, it feels like you're really racing against them because they've chosen what they
yeah,
look like in the game. So
yeah.
that's super smart. And with the avatars in mind, when you talk about avatars, one thing that came to mind was your Stig um,
Hmm.
season activation feature
Yeah,
set. How did that come about?
yeah. Oh, so that was the second part of our BBC license with for the Top
Mm,
Gear brand. We started we signed that license at the beginning of Circuit Superstars when we first launched for the Top Gear Time Attack mode, where it was really cool. Like Romain Grosjean, Lando Norris, Jimmy Broadbent, Super GT, the Quadrant team. They played Circuit Superstars and created a ghost that you could race against. And there was like a series of videos that was made to promote the game, which was really cool. And then I always thought it was like really cool to be able to jump into the game and race against the ghost of
yeah,
Lando
that's
Norris.
very cool.
I love that. And then the second part of that partnership was building a DLC, which was the Stiga Challenge, and that was a lot of fun to build. That I don't know if you've checked it out, but it's very different. It's not circuit racing. You're just doing stunts and like dog agility competition like
And that,
challenges.
but this is now another module, right? That you can now use in if you're
Yeah.
going to do BMX superstars or rally superstars, you now
Um.
have all these kind of obstacles and
Yeah.
modes you
Like
can use.
gymkhana style. Yeah, we've thought that for a while. This was not this year, but last year, as we were prototyping the state challenge, we were imagining that we could potentially make a game that could be a lot of fun with like kind of like rally meets ninja, American Ninja. You know,
Right,
like cars jumping through different challenges and ramps and racing in that way for time trials.
like
So
like
that's been in the back of our
like
minds.
Tony Hawk skateboarding meets
Exactly.
WRC.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would
Yeah.
be yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
That would be very, very cool. So you mentioned there like how many people
Yeah.
kind of got behind that game, and obviously the BBC activation helped. And even with Case Up coming
Hmm.
out, you had loads of like esports and sim racing news outlets reporting on karting superstars like almost immediately, right? How does that
Yeah.
feel when you see all these people backing you because they already knew what you were about? They kind of get your brand and they're like, oh my god,
Yeah.
there's more.
Yeah. It feels very lovely. It feels validating. We feel nervous, to be very honest. We feel very nervous
Interesting.
about the, like we feel nervous about taking a risk, and what that can mean to the image of our studio,
Mm,
right? Because building something quick, putting it out there, with our hopes of creating a revenue stream that allows us to keep going and building this. There's a lot of hope in that, and a lot of vulnerability, coming forward and being like, this is what we've got to offer right now, help us build more. And Circus Superstars was critically acclaimed. It kind of came out of nowhere, built this game that people loved, and so it feels scary to us to put something out there that we don't have 3 years to build and polish, but uh, a few weeks. And so it makes us nervous to be seen as, like, to not deliver
mm.
up to the quality that we've established for ourselves. And so that's just something that we're gonna have to see how it feels.
So how
But
how has it gone
yeah,
initially then? So it's what has it even been a week yet
yeah,
since the game was out? I can't remember when I saw it. I think it was it was just
um,
it was near Gamescom
yeah.
when you messaged me. So it hasn't been long at all that this game has
No,
been
we
out.
we we announced it during
Yeah,
Gamescom.
right. Okay. So
Yeah, yeah.
how have the sales been? How has the feedback been? Like do you
Oh, we haven't released it.
Oh, I thought I bought it.
Yeah, no. Really? Karting
Yeah,
Superstars?
I haven't
No.
started it yet.
No, you probably added it to your
Oh,
wish
okay,
list.
yeah, it was a
Yeah.
Gamescom was a lot of wish listing and buying games. It was a bit of a frenzy.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, no, we haven't released it. We don't have a release date yet, but it's Q3. Like, we definitely want to launch the game in September. Um, as soon as we feel okay, this is tight enough for us to put it out there,
Mm,
and take a leap of faith on it. Just gonna wait for the ambulance. I don't know if you could hear it.
just a little bit. It was adding a sense of
Yeah,
drama to the
to the
to the we're
to the
nervous.
urgency. Yeah. Um, yeah, no, so we're but to answer your question about how it's going, we felt super excited about the reception. On the sim racing Reddit, it's done super
Mm,
well. Like, people are super excited, asking us a lot about BR support and wheel support, which are new to us,
mm,
but we've been very curious, and started to pay attention to those possibilities just because of how much it comes up. um, our community has been receiving it well. We've recently reorganized our Discord around the company instead of around Circuit Superstars, and players have been, like, welcoming of the new. We call it the little brother to Circuit
oh, that's
Superstars, Karting
nice.
Superstars. um, it and we haven't done that just out of, like, being cheeky. It is a small
Mm,
game. It's a small game to start. We're going to release with a small amount of content. It's a single card versus, the I don't know, like 15 that we have on Circuit
yeah, yeah,
Superstars. uh, just one kind of racing. So we understand that it's a smaller offering than we did with Circuit Superstars, and are hoping that the fact that the core gameplay is so gripping and so fun is enough to captivate players into supporting us and hopefully helping us build that game.
yeah. That's. I mean, I feel like you've got a lot of positive signals already. So I appreciate why
I
you
think so.
must be nervous, right? As soon as you announce anything, I imagine you're nervous. I bet even with Circuit Superstars, you were
Yeah.
nervous when you kind of
Oh,
got to the
yeah.
moment where it was going to release because it's that terrifying idea of it going out and just it not taking off. But I think it's
Yeah.
interesting something you said earlier about not wanting to let down the community because
Hmm.
you're about to become a two game studio, right? So
Hmm.
everybody, well, a lot of people will buy Karting Superstars because they like Circuit Superstars so much, and so they're carrying that trust, which will then allow you to
Yeah.
do more with both games. But it
Yeah.
feels like you have a really strong community, and it feels like you've been focusing on that community for this very reason, knowing that at some point,
Yeah.
you give and you give and you give and you give and you share with this community as much as you possibly can, and you're very open and sincere with them. And then when it's like, right, we're going to do this game. We think it's really fun, but it is smaller. But trust us, you've built up
Yeah.
years. of this trusting community that
Hmm.
I was about. I don't want to use the phrase cash in on because that sounds a little bit, but
Hmm.
you know what I mean. Like it's you've got that
Yeah,
reserve of faith from the community.
yeah. I love how you phrased all of that. That's certainly my hope, and it's certainly how I feel that our the core people that really enjoyed Circuit Superstars, and and that have accompanied us through its development and that understand the team behind it. You know, like that connect to the humanity of the
Mm,
development team, and the fact that we're five,
it's nuts.
which is kind of nuts. Yeah. um I do I do hope for that support to translate into case up and hopefully into again building this racing superstars world.
Since you mentioned it, Will
Yeah.
support and
Yes.
VR. That's very exciting. So
Yeah.
immediately I'm thinking, how beautifully colorful would this VR world be, especially for karting, right?
Yeah.
So obviously for the car, a lot of the color of the scenery will be shrouded by
Hmm.
the chassis of the car, the roof of the car, the uprights, etc. Right? But you'll see some
Yeah.
of the color through the windshield. But I can't imagine how beautiful driving around the world that you've created would be if it's go-karting where
Yeah.
it's totally open, nothing between you and all the
Yeah.
colors that you put into this game.
Yeah.
It would look. I mean, it looks
Yeah.
stunning. Even the the gameplay previews that I was watching this morning, they just look absolutely
Yeah.
beautiful. I can't imagine
Yeah.
how perfect that would be for VR.
I'm so curious. I John, my teammate, is very passionate about making something VR with our titles eventually, and so we might explore because the requests are enough that we're like, okay, like maybe there could be something great here,
Mm,
and so we'll see. I think that the world is definitely so beautiful, that and in circuit it was you know, there's a like if you had a very wide monitor, you could see how we're indie in
yeah.
that the world ends and you realize that the track is a floating island with like nothing on its edges. With Karting Superstars, we've built it's a different way of developing levels. We have to have horizons and like interesting landscapes
Mm.
for people to see, to contextualize where you're at. And so that is we're doing a lot more of world building, and so I think that that would definitely contribute to the VR experience feeling very like you're wrapped in a nice world
Sounds
to
cozy.
exist in. So yeah, it sounds very
Yeah.
cozy. Yeah, we love. I think all five of us describe our games as
Oh,
cozy,
really? Well,
which
that's
is
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, it definitely. I mean,
yeah,
it definitely comes across, and yeah, it's definitely a world that I would want to visit. Force feedback and wheels, right?
yes.
So
Oh yeah,
this opens you up to a enormous amount of streamers who will only stream on a wheel. Like there's a load of sim
yeah,
racers who wouldn't be seen dead on a controller because for I don't know reasons, right?
yeah,
So I love
yeah.
the idea of sim racers who are usually very serious, talking about tire pressures and bump
Hmm.
rates and wing
Yeah,
angles, being there with their like Simicube, Fanatec, Acetec setup, but on screen it's a chase camera rather than like
yeah,
a cockpit camera. That sounds like,
yeah,
and presume I don't know if if you were going to do wheel support, whether or not you would then also add in a cockpit view to support that, or if you'd be
yeah.
like, no, 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 you're gonna have to swallow your pride, Mister Sim Racer, and you're gonna have to drive with the wheel on in chase cam.
Yeah. Well, we want to figure it out, and we want to be able to experiment.
Mm,
I think one thing I'd like to tell our community is help us experiment with Karting Superstars. Like, if you support us, we can experiment. And because, for example, with wheel support, our initial impression is like there's work behind making it feel good.
mm,
It's not just plugging in the possibility. It's okay, we need to craft this to feel interesting and good and engaging and as gripping as it can feel with a gamepad. And we want to be able to explore that. The cockpit view has been super interesting, because people have asked for it a lot in Circuit Superstars. They've asked for it for they've wondered whether we're going to support it for Karting Superstars. And so again, like, you know, where there's an interest, there's a will in us to experiment. I think it's a matter of having the time to. We care a lot about what it feels like, and the physics making sense to your visual and control experience. And so it's definitely not a no. It's something that we haven't started exploring, but that it's big on our minds.
Well, I mean, there is a huge amount to be excited about for the future of circuit
Thank
and
you.
karting superstars. And
Thank you.
yes, it's on my wish list from after the Gamescom. So I'm
Thank
looking
you.
forward
Yeah.
to getting it, and we'll have it in the office. So
Yeah.
here's a question then. You've probably listed 2,000-3,000 hours worth of work if you were to execute on all of these ideas that you've
Yeah.
just listed out. The scale of your
Hmm.
ambition for this game, for both games, is huge. And then you
Yeah.
reeled off, you know, Rally Superstars or Rally meets Tony Hawk or the jet
Well,
skiing game, right?
water bikes. Personally, yeah, I just my favorite racing game ever. I think above Mario Kart. It's three. Uh, Wave
Mm-hmm.
Race, Mario Kart,
Yeah.
and Top Gear.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and yeah, Wave Race is just an astonishing game. I don't know if
I
you've ever
have. I
played
have.
it.
Yeah.
Yes, it's like I don't understand how they made it feel how it did
Mm-mm.
with the technology that they had.
Yeah.
Super inspiring. So yeah, like water bikes is something that we'd love to tap into, but we'll see, right? It also has to make sense to market and community
And
and all
it's
that
a whole
stuff.
new
But
there's a lot of
yeah,
new stuff that wouldn't exist in the toolbox, especially with, the road is now moving, which is
water.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
which is
Yeah,
sounds
the road is
sounds
water.
like quite a big change.
Yeah.
So my question was going to be, with such a small team and such a large
Hmm.
ambition, how do you maintain balance personally? Because
Hmm.
if you wanted to work, there was always something that you could be working on. How do you stop yourself?
Yeah. From oh yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it is we are a very conversational studio. Like we talk a lot about our decisions, and we talk through them, and we hear everybody's perspectives, and we assess what makes sense to do next. And so we keep a long list of things that we'd like to do. We have a team wide one with like lots of ideas. We have our suggestions channel on Discord, which we look at. We have um, personal lists. Like John keeps a personal list of like uh, tools that he wants to build for development, or like better ways to manage our repositories, better ways for us to build, make game
Mm,
builds. And then Alberto keeps his own list of things that he wants to do. So it's like we kind of all have such strong skill sets and such capacity to build across all the different aspects of the game. So what we've learned a lot with Karting Superstars is to come together, put everything on the table, and be like, what's most important
yeah.
for us to focus, and then that's kind of how we make decisions. But I would like to say that the Karting Superstars has been an unbelievable effort from the team, and it's not sustainable.
No.
Like we can't work like this forever.
Yeah.
It's a risk that we're taking, and we're hoping that once once it's out, and hopefully we gain a little bit more stability, we don't have to make decisions in a rush. We can take time to experiment, take time to play and prioritize in a way that makes sense.
You've got to keep having fun doing it, right?
Yeah,
I
definitely.
feel like with a
Yeah,
game that's so
yeah,
fun orientated, it would be noticeable
yeah.
for the like the consumer if you guys had stopped
Hmm.
enjoying it. It's it's kind of almost like part of the job.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly. To continue to enjoy
Yeah.
it, 100%. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it can be difficult eventually. You can get tired of your game. You go through periods of that, but you fall in love with it again. Like I recently played circuit again after a couple of months of like taking a bit of a break, and it always astonishes me once I come back with fresh eyes. I'm like, ah, we did that.
Yeah,
I do love
it
it.
is nice to be in a world where you get to create, like genuinely create something that somebody
Yeah.
else can can be in their
Yeah.
minds.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's nuts.
Yeah. It's huge. Yeah.
Well, congratulations, because I think it's an awesome. It's
Thank you,
honestly, I
Tom.
don't know why, right? Well, I mean, actually, I could list off a dozen
Hmm.
reasons why, but I genuinely think that the sim race community like has, although if they had to rattle off their like favorite sims, it's like iRacing, Assetto Corsa, maybe like somebody might have say Gran Turismo, and then they'll name all the old ones. But in terms of like, which ones do you truly enjoy the most? I reckon a lot of sim
Hmm.
racers would have Circuit Superstars very high up their list, because
Oh.
it's a I don't know, it's just a smiley game.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. Oh, that means a lot. Thank you, Tom. I
No, well,
appreciate
thank
that.
you for coming on the
Yeah.
podcast. Really
Yeah, it's
appreciate
been a
getting an
pleasure.
insight into how on earth you've managed to pull this off, and it's going to be great to actually play it when it comes out. So
Yeah, so soon. And we'll hopefully be able to do some dev podcasts, so people can look out for those when we do, to share a bit of a postmortem of what this was like.
that would be awesome. That'd be great. Yeah, I will definitely
Yeah.
tune into those. And if people want to get involved in your community,
Yeah.
where do they go?
They should go to our Discord, which is Original Fire Games. I can send you a link to it. They can find us on the web, both on Karting Superstars website, Circuit Superstars, and Original Fire Games. We're on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all the
Yeah, all the
places.
places, and make sure
Yeah,
you wishlist the game. Most importantly.
please do. It helps us a ton if you wish list.
Great. Kara, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And see you soon.
Thank you, Tom.
So there we go. That was Carolina Mastretta, co-founder of Original Fire Games and creator of Circuit Superstars and Karting Superstars. And who knows, maybe Rally Superstars or Jet Ski Superstars. We will keep our eyes open for that. Thank you so much, Kara, for your time. Really appreciated our chat. As always, the podcast was sponsored by Aztec Sim Sports. Thank you very much for the sponsorship, Aztec Sim Sports. We are looking forward to getting the Forte set of wheel and pedals in our office, and looking forward to all the projects that we'll be doing over the next few months. So thanks again for sponsoring, and thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next week.